So hey guys, ever since I bought this car, I've had a few issues with the fuel gauge. This one here doesn't go quite up to the full mark. It'll linger around the 3/4 mark. And when I get down to about a quarter tank, what it'll do is just cut off completely. You can see it buried up in there even though I still have fuel in the tank. Now this is a common issue and I've seen it on many cars, so today I'm going to be showing you how to fix it. So, alright, the first thing we're going to do here is open the trunk, and then you're going to see that the carpet is snapped in right here along the rear. And go around and completely unsnap it. And next we're going to remove the carpet just like so. And underneath it you're going to see this here. And hiding underneath is your fuel level sender, and that's what we're going to be removing here. So alright, I've gone ahead and disconnected the battery because once I remove this we will have access to the fuel tank and we don't want any sparks. So to remove this now, you're going to need a 4mm hex key and then remove the 5 socket head bolts on top here. So once you have the 5 socket head bolts removed, you want to make sure that you keep track of where your wires are plugged in. And you're just going to pull this out. You want to do it slowly because there will be fuel inside. And you want to make sure that it all drains out into the tank. And then there you go. It's alright, I now have the sender out of the car and sitting on the bench here. And here's a few things you're going to need. First of all, you're going to need some carb cleaner. Any cheap old carb cleaner will work. Next, you're going to need a Dremel or a grinder with a cutting disc like this one here. And you're going to need a flat blade screwdriver. Now, you can see that I have 2 of them here. And when you look down at the end there, you can see that there is a nut with a slot in it, but you can see that it threads onto the stud in the center there, and this will all probably make more sense once I get it apart and you can see it. But anyway, we need to modify our screwdriver to be able to get in that groove, and you can see this one here is a little bit of a small screwdriver and it'll probably work, but I have this one here that I think would be a better fit. And what I'm going to do is, so that way I can get it down in that slot, is I'm going to notch out the tip there using that grinder. So I want to get this as far away from the grinder as possible since this could possibly ignite. Now I'm going to turn my grinder on. It's alright, once you have your screwdriver notched, it doesn't have to be anything special or very good looking. You can go ahead and put it in there and remove the nut. And let me show you the nut right quick. See that threads on to the stud here, and the stud is kind of in the way. So that's why you need to notch your screwdriver. Once you have your nut removed here, this should come apart very smoothly. And then you can see the float that's inside. This float travels up and down like that as you fill the tank. And what happens here is that you can see that there are some wires on here that give the gauge resistance readings, And as these wires get dirty over time, they don't give a good reading anymore. So what you'll need to do is spray them off with some carb cleaner and wipe them off, and be very careful because these are very, very thin and they do break very easily. You'll also want to make sure that you spray the contacts that's on the float and make sure that gets clean as well. Alright, that should do it. Now you can see this copper wire running down here, and that's for your fuel light. So even if you're not getting a good reading with your gauge, your fuel light will often still work because you can see that it has two contacts down there at the bottom. So when the tank is empty, it'll go down and contact there and turn your fuel light on, even if you're not getting a reading from the gauge itself. So you want to make sure that these contacts are clean, so that way your fuel light will also work. It's alright, once you have the wires and the float sprayed off with carb cleaner and you've made sure that all the gunk is removed from them, then you can go ahead and put it back together, and this should operate properly now. You can see that I have the violet wire on the G terminal, the yellow on the W, and the ground up here. Now if you want to test this before you put it back together, you can do so, but make sure that you don't have anything nearby that will arc. Now these are all ground wires, so it should be perfectly safe as long as you have this covered up. However, I'm not responsible if something is wired wrong with your car and you mess up. So you want to use your own discretion. So what I'm going to be doing now is taking this and seeing if my gauge goes to full, which it is, and then I want to turn it slowly down, and I want the gauge to move smoothly. I don't want it jumping around, and then it should go down to empty and the fuel light should come on, and I can do that a few times and it's working flawlessly. Alright, you can now see that my gauge goes to the full mark. So that tells me before there was just too much gunk in here on the wires and on the float itself for it to get an accurate reading. And also you can see that it no longer cuts off when it hits the bottom half here. Before, when I got to about a quarter tank, it just didn't get any reading at all. But now everything is working as it should, and I'm ready to put this back in the tank. And here's how it's going to look when you get everything put back together. It's alright, now that the fuel gauge is working properly, you can see I have a quarter of a tank left. Before I was having to guess at how much fuel I had remaining, which was not a lot of fun most of the time. Now what I'm going to do is go and fill the tank up and see if we can get it up to the full mark. It's alright, I'm going to go around the corner here and fill my tank up. Let's see if we can go around. See if the gauge is going up to the full mark now. Sorry guys, I just pulled into the driveway, and as you can see, my gauge is working perfect. I now have a full tank reading, and I can even see the 1-1 there, and that's where you want it to be pointing. And before, whenever I'd fill it up, I'd only get up to about that 3/4 mark there, and it was very annoying, not to mention that anything below a quarter of a tank I had to guess. So it's nice to have this fixed, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.